Shireen, thank you for joining me for our Women Who Make It Happen series.
Thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. Would you be able to give an introduction to you and a little bit about what you're doing at the moment, please?
So I'm Shireen Clark. I have been in financial services for a number of years in various roles, last being a CRO. I'm presently consulting as a chosen option with various firms in the industry.
And navigating throughout your career, so in your earlier career days through to where you are now, could you give us a little bit of an idea about how you've transitioned through the different companies and where that interest has laid for you really throughout the wider risk compliance space?
So I didn't intentionally go in to risk. I actually went in through legal and compliance, which at the time was very separate to risk. Risk wasn't sort of really clearly identified. And it's sort of peaked in different ways. So what I did, and this is the sort of diversion, but what I did want to do was become an accountant. So I went and moved from the legal and compliance area into accountancy to do my accountancy. Did my accountancy and then promptly realised that I didn't want to be an accountant anymore.
That's not the first time I've heard.
And also I had young children at that point, and I think with the industry we were in, and at that sort of particular time, it was very difficult because it was very intense, just for very long periods of time, and I wasn't seeing the children at that point. So I took a move into heading up sort of, at the time, I don't even know if it was classed to what type of risk. It was operational risk, but it was in the business. And at the organisation I was with, we were sort of dealing with a lot of the regulators. And I suddenly realised that I'd found my passion. I'd found areas that I really enjoyed. I was having to read lots of documents, create lots of procedures, talk to the businesses, talk to the actual, it was still within finance, but talk to the financial areas about the risks and what they meant. And at that point we also had resilience and various other risks, so it was a wide plethora of different areas, and I found that I really enjoyed it. So I gained more and more experience through that. I moved into other organisations, into particular types of risk, mainly in the non-financial. And then in one of my organisations that I worked in, I was asked to head up the third-party risk, and at that point I was fairly new, and that's where it sort of really came into light that risk was a hot topic. It wasn't just compliance anymore; it was risk, and risk had its own agendas with it. Regulators understood that, and I'm still in it, and I love it. I absolutely enjoy it.
Which area was it for you mostly then that kind of led to that passion leading to where you are now?
Initially, resilience. So it came from the crisis management, business continuity, that sort of area of non-financial risk. And at that point, it was very much what the regulators are looking for now. We were looking at in the very large organisations, making sure that it was not only, I think what we've done is define some of those risks, but at the time we were very much, it was all together in operational risk. So we were looking at third parties at that point as well, moving quite forward with it. We were looking at the crisis management. I'll be showing my age now, but we're going back to some of this 9/11, 7/7, and what came out of that, and having to really develop on that. And I quite like pressure. I like working under pressure. I like the intensity of it, and I seem to do well on it, and I thrive on that.
So what differences have you maybe seen in the different companies that you've worked for? And I think how has that helped shape your career?
So I think I have seen differences in the organisations that I've worked within. I think from my perspective, I've certainly seen that risk was very much, it was much more mature in the American organisations that I've worked within. First of all, I think it tends to have been, and maybe that's partly to do with the internet and everything else, but and computers. But at the time, our regulators were very, very separate.
Yeah.
They didn't really speak to each other. You're seeing lots of themes that are coming through from all the regulators globally now. And I've seen that through the European and the global organisations that I've been working in, where the maturity of risk, whilst I originally thought it was good, you can see how much it's enhanced and how much it's become part of the agenda.
Yeah.
Things like risk appetites, those thresholds have really, really become the forefront of some of those decision makings. Whereas before they were just thought of as appendices in your, the board minutes, they're now forefronts of it, which is fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think it's interesting because we get the debate sometimes come up about, risk, certainly CROs, the buck stops with you. You have to be the voice and reason of challenge, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So sometimes it can be seen as, okay, no, we can't do that. You can't do that. But I think the industry's come a long way. And certainly with the evolving regulations and the trends coming in, operational resilience was a very big topic as well fairly recently. So interesting that you kind of found your niche and your real passion in that.
I think it's definitely one of those things that if I look, it's about the collaborative areas for me. And I think that's partly to do with my nature as well. I like working with teams, and I think with some of the crisis management, for example, the resilience, it's about supporting and keeping things buoyant and, consistent.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really, really enjoy with it.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that I see from the agendas as well is the fact that it was often just put as a topic, whereas now it's really starting to mature because people are just bringing it into the conversations far more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've obviously had the role of CRO. I know you're consulting at the moment and offering some very valued advice to another client. As CRO, and I'm not sure if this ties into the collaborative piece you've mentioned, but you don't get to CRO on your lonesome. So, how did you get into leadership and wanting to really take on the mantle of CRO? Because it's not for everybody.
No, it's not.
And holding an SMF potentially.
Yeah.
But what was it for you?
For me, I actually like the accountability. I like the feeling that my opinion counts.
Yeah.
But as we say to most people with the role, it is an opinion. Ultimately, you can't make that on your own. You have to make those decisions together with the view of everyone else. And I think that's partly why I enjoy the CRO role and also working with the C-suites because it forms part of that. I think it's the reason why I've sort of led into that way in leadership. I am very much about bringing tools and bringing followers on, and developing them and networking people. I think we've moved from the ability of seeing people in a clear CV, resume, this is what they've done, this is it, as opposed to seeing their abilities to mobilize into other areas of it. And I often see people who have got incredibly good skills sort of not all being looked over for roles because they haven't got it on the CV, as opposed to bringing them in and teaching them the product, teaching them about it, whereas they've got the core skills of being in risk or compliance. And I think that's really important because I didn't come in through a degree of compliance or a degree of risk. There's certifications obviously that you do along the way, but I didn't come directly through that route, and I don't think everybody necessarily needs to.
No, I agree. And we often have the same conversations with clients. Clients ask us. Other people are better at writing CVs than others, but it's how you sell that experience that you've had. It's how you sell yourself. It's you need to bring to life what's on that piece of paper, but the piece of paper shouldn't define really like who you are. And it's a shame that people get overlooked.
Yeah.
And that's where we try and consult and guide and educate some of our client base. So I wish more people would do the same. But your leadership style then, Shireen, you've alluded to a few points there, but could you elaborate for us?
Oh, yeah. I think I am in fact, I really believe I'm a situational leader. And I've come to that conclusion over time because I think I've tried to fit myself into other boxes as such. I've tried to sort of think, okay, well, I'm this type of leadership and I'm this. And actually I'm not. It's about the right situation. It's about the right leadership at that given time.
Yeah.
For the people that are there to make sure that they're getting the support that they need. And I think that's come from life events. I think it helps me both in my work life and my personal life. Because I've got children.
Yeah.
And basically never know what situation I'm going to be put into with them. So I think it's always helped.
Yeah. How do you balance that then? So holding the level of seniority as you have done, balancing your home life. How do you make sure that you have time committed for both?
I think I always thought it was going to get easier as they get older, and it definitely doesn't.
Please don't tell me that.
No, it's about the same. So I'm not going to say that it's harder. Definitely not. It's the same. I thought, I think the thing is, because they still need you. They still need you at whatever age. I think it was difficult when they were younger because it was physically being stuff. I thankfully had support.
Yeah.
And I think that came from both my husband and from help, really. And my family weren't always close by, so I needed some help, and that really was key. Be it nurseries,
yeah,
be it nannies, be it various people, and I think I didn't give up on it. So there was points where I thought I can't do this. Not because I didn't want to do it, but because physically it's quite impossible. I thought it was impossible. And I'd often have people saying, you can, or we'll find a way. And I got through it. And I think, I'm not saying it's easier now, but I think there are women, there are men, there are, people actually there supporting it now. And I think it's making it easier to talk about. It's not a subject where if you can't do it, you're failing. It's about finding the help when you need it. I sort of had a number of times I at one point wanted to work part-time, and I wasn't able to. So we sort of strived for a flexible working where I could work from home. And one of the organisations, which I'm incredibly fortunate, it wasn't quite like it is now, but were able to give me equipment to have at home, to be able to have an office at home, so I could work from remotely. So it was give and take at some points. But I've worked all the way through my children. So I would absolutely say you can do it. Anyone can, you can do it.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think that level of resilience that you show, and obviously the more senior the role, as well as having that family life. Testament to you.
Thank you.
I just want to pick up on a point that you've mentioned there about that company allowing you to have that flexibility almost, which maybe wasn't the norm previously in careers. So what kind of mentality shift or maybe other shifts have you seen in the industry that maybe is more conducive to our working arrangements now, or just generally within FS?
Good and bad. I think COVID has been a real testament to how we work. Because people actually previously thought you couldn't work from home, and it's worked. It's successful.
Proof you can. Yeah.
Almost forced to prove we can, but we can. And I think, having said that, there was, I've worked for global organizations, and I think, good or bad, that at certain times they wanted you online. And I wanted to be online. I wanted to be speaking to the US. I wanted to be speaking to India. I wanted to be speaking to wherever. So the ability to be remote meant that I could be flexible with what I did as well. Yeah. So I think there's also an education that has happened, as both culturally and sort of forced in some way through our own legislation, to enable people to really understand what it means to work, be a working parent, I should say. I think now men are able to have parental leave. That wasn't the case at the time. People had to take holiday. So it's allowing that flexibility, that equality that's starting to come through. That's I think made a huge difference.
Yeah. Equality. We get banded around quite a lot with DE&I. So, and again, from your experience, what examples have you seen where maybe there has been more of that diversity, and what companies have done it well? What did they adopt? What did they do differently to allow it?
I think, again, I was very fortunate to be in an organisation that really adopted it early. That was Citigroup.
Yeah.
And sort of being on the D&I committee at the time, really starting to see how we could investigate in the environments that we were in, identify where we can pick up on areas that were weak, not weak, but immature in our understanding diversity. Diversity was often just male, female.
Yeah.
And it's a huge spectrum. And they were very, very good at adopting that. And to be honest, I've been very fortunate. I think I've seen it in all my organisations. I've never felt that there wasn't diversity and inclusion.
Yeah.
And my background is, I'm culturally diverse anyway. And so growing up as a young child, I could sometimes see that in the environments that I was growing up in, and I've never felt that in anything that I've done with work. I've always felt included in work, which is really important.
Yeah. And how about for you when you've built teams, developed teams? I know you said that people development is really important for you as well. So the diversity, importantly, how have you found that when recruiting for your team, perhaps, or building those teams?
I think in early stages it was quite difficult, actually. And I say that because it tended to be, I think partly because the organisations, it was just male orientated.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think the right ways diplomatically. But it was male orientated, and so there wasn't the ability. There was very few women, as an example, to go into it. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think, even what's the word I'm trying to think of, from exercises or from round tables that you've done through the industry itself, and practices, and I've been to some fantastic round tables here, where you can see that the diversity is starting to come into the table. People have a voice. Inclusion is there, and I think it's really making a difference.
Yeah, good. Well, we'll be seeing you at some of the others then, Shireen, in the future.
Thoroughly enjoyed them.
Good. So just talking as your career as a whole, if you could maybe pinpoint a few key success factors for you personally, what would they be?
I think getting the CRO role. For me, I mentioned I didn't directly come through a route that was sort of vocational to that.
Yeah.
And so it was a true success of hard work, true testament to hard work. But also from some of the organisations that I've been in, giving the ability to realise that it's not just about partly academia, but also, you know, that technical skills. It's about you being part of that. It's about what you bring to the table. And I certainly felt that came when I got that role. But likewise, I've now gone into consultancy, not being able to do, you know, I chose not to do that when I was sort of with the children, because I didn't want to be away from them for that long. And I'm quite proud I've done that.
Yeah.
Going into different organisations, being able to pick that up, I absolutely love.
Yeah. Good.
Okay.
So, if we were to end our interview podcast today, what advice would you give or impart on maybe that younger female talent, younger talent generally?
Yeah.
And any words of wisdom from you, Shireen?
Thought about this. Do you know, I saw this on the side, this sounds odd, but I saw this on the side of a wall. And
Okay.
it stuck with me. I know it sounds odd, I've got a picture of it. And it just said, in giant letters, never give up.
Yeah.
And I really believe that. I really think for people, sometimes, you know, as young or in whatever situations, there is a workaround that you can do, and there is an ability to push through that.
Yeah.
And so for the younger generation, if you have a dream, go for it.
Yeah. I think they are very powerful words to end today. So thank you for joining.